Hello and welcome to this Project in a Box video. This is going to be a full exploration of the planning capability. We're going to start with some slides and discussion, introducing you to topics, and then go away and look at all that within the system. So let's get started then. Project in a Box is about centralizing your planning, amongst of course many other things, taking the data that's in your plan files and assembling it all into a single central repository so that you can cut and dice it, analyze it, produce the outputs, run reports against it, dashboards, send notifications based on the content, etc. So it's taking the data out of your plans and storing it all in a central database so that you can use it in a uniform fashion. So in practice, we start with plan files, and these are very important. You'll have a plan in every project, perhaps sometimes more than one, and it's stored as a file in the file management structure alongside all the other files that you'll have on your project. Users who have permissions can check the file out, make changes and check it back in. Now this can be Microsoft Project file if you want it to be, and therefore it would be edited in Microsoft Project, and the person doing the edits would obviously need a license for Microsoft Project. And that's a problem for many users. So you can use Planner instead, which is our own free planning tool. Anybody who has it installed can edit a Planner file, and it's completely free to do that. We can also bring data in from files which are like transfer files, so Excel or CSV, etc. Those are just simple files in the structure. Anyone who has permissions can access those if they need to. Whenever a file of that type is checked back in, we check to make sure if it's a data source for that project. So we keep a list of those things, and if your file is a data source file, then the data is extracted from that into a central database. So we have a central data store which has every task from every project across the entire system. We do a sort of lookup on that data to identify tasks with resource names against users in the system. So we have a lookup for managing that because it's very important to be able to give people that cut of the data, their own tasks, for example. And that data is then available for all sorts of different analysis. We can reproduce Gantt charts. We can produce task lists for users or by portfolio or by filter. We can produce resource charts, and there's a whole new video on that as well. We can drive notifications to people based on when a task becomes overdue, when a new task is due to start, etc., sending people reminders about all that. We can produce calendar views for export to Outlook if need be, and also milestone timelines as well. So a whole range of different analyses based on that task data. So what do we collect and calculate? Well, like I've already said, there's a slight difference between Microsoft Project and the import type files and Planner. Core set of data which is consistent is the essential things which people collect in plans, hopefully. Task ID and name, start and end dates, duration, percentage complete, description, comments, resource allocations, which can be multiple. I'm allocated for 50% of the time to a particular task, etc. So when you check the plan in, we extract that data from all plan types. And that's going to feed into the central database. Of course, we can extend and enhance that when it's our own tool. So we bring much more back from our own tool. Dependencies is listed here. So we don't bring the dependencies back from Microsoft Project. Microsoft Project has the dependencies set up on the task, and that scheduling engine is driven to produce when the tasks start and finish. We just take the start and end dates from Microsoft Project, and we then make sure that we're not trying to recalculate like Microsoft Project does in any way. We're just showing the dates that Microsoft Project had scheduled for you. So we don't bring the dependencies from that. With Planner, we do bring dependency information as well, because of course it's our scheduling engine, so we can reproduce it if we need to. We bring task colors and tags for filtering, the date the task was created, a whole load of data around costings, so task budgeting, the rates associated with resources, so we can work out what their cost is based on their allocations, and also fixed costs. And then for actuals, we also collect the number of hours people have booked and work out the real cost of that and the real fixed costs incurred as well. And that allows us to calculate a whole load of really useful data around cost from the bottom up part of the plan. We also collect plan level status and commentaries, a progress to date percentage complete, which is different from a straight percentage complete, and that gives you a much better measure of progress to date. So, are you actually on track with the activities that should be done by now? That's what that value is telling you. And then we also calculate project or plan level finance stats, budget, actual and progress, which takes account of the percentage completes. So there are some other things as well which are useful, and these are calculated by the system at the time the file is checked in. So overall start and end dates, percentage completes of the project as a whole, not just at the task levels. And then also task stats, how many tasks are complete, overdue, etc. Those are calculated by the system for all file types. So you might just be working away on your plan, but as soon as you check it in, we do a whole load of work with it to calculate and generate a whole lot more useful information to feed into your reporting and analysis. I want to just talk a little bit about dependencies as well. So we'll be familiar with this sort of display. This is actually coming from the system, and this is showing a program or portfolio level display for a set of projects, in this case Department of Information Services, and we can see a number of different projects scheduled through here. And they've got some dependencies in them. So this particular example here is within a project. It's obviously a very small project, but there are dependencies within that project. This task drives another task, drives a milestone, etc. And those are normal dependencies you would set up within your plan. You'd have something similar in your Microsoft project plan as well, although as I say you wouldn't see them on the main system display here, but they are set up to drive the tasks within the project plan. We also, though, allow you to do something really interesting, which is to have a different type of dependency within the main system. And that's an example here. This dependency, or in fact there were 3 different dependencies here, this task, and this task, which are in 3 different projects, are all driven by the combination of this task, which is in a preceding project. So these are what we call intra-plan dependencies. You set these up in the main system, and you say, I want this task in project B to start at a point after the task in project A is finished. When project A is checked back in and moves around, it automatically checks out project B and adjusts it accordingly in case of any changes in project A. So it ripples along any changes for you into following projects. That's really neat, and it does it all the way down the tree for you. So projects that lean on other projects, etc., it takes that further on for you as it goes. And that has a form for doing that, like I say, which is here. And this is showing that particular example of that task. And in fact, this one's running with a lag in it. So this task starts 20 days after this one finished. So you can do all sorts of neat things with that. That's the case for planner files. If you've got a Microsoft project file, it can be the feeding out one. So this could be coming from a Microsoft project file, but when you're feeding in, it must be a planner file, and that's because we have to be able to open that file programmatically, reschedule it and close it again, and we can't do that in Microsoft Project. So moving on to the next thing, which is talking about your analysis of data, we have 2 things we call a data range and a view. So this is the range of data, the data range. It's what it brings back from the database, and the ones that are accessible to you will depend on who you are and your permissions. Every user can always see my things, so I could see my project tasks, my program tasks, all my tasks, and those would show me that cut of the database, information from me. Everyone can always see their own information, and that's coming back to the resource names on the tasks and being tied to your user. As I say, we have a lookup for dealing with that. So I can see those things, and in this case I can see the project level tasks. So I'm the project manager, and this is, if you like, a reproduction of what the individual plan will look like within the project. Of course, you might have multiple plans in a project, in which case you'd see all of those tasks here because they're all tasks associated with this project. Same thing when you go up to a portfolio level, you see all the tasks across a collection of projects. They're the data ranges. It's the cut of the data returning the maximum amount that meets that characteristic from the database. Sometimes, in fact quite often, that's too much though. So in this case I might run what we call a view, which is going to give it a set of filtering instructions and presentation instructions, and I've chosen a standard one called overdue tasks. So you can see here it says views is the default one. Here we've got view is overdue tasks, and it's therefore running some filters, changing the display options, and it's showing me for this project all the tasks which are overdue. So these two tasks here are not complete and they're behind today's date, so they should be. This task here is not complete and it's behind today's date, so it should be, so it's overdue. This task below is behind, but it's not overdue because it's not due yet. So it's running some filters which go away and find me that. These sort of things are really useful for doing standard analyses, for getting to grips with the things that are really important to you from a mass of data. You could run this against all the projects on the server if you wanted to, and go away and pick out those one or two tasks from within thousands that are matching the criteria you're interested in. So this is really useful for, like I say, getting to grips with the data rather than being swamped with a mass of things which are not necessarily relevant to your current circumstances. So sharing our insights. Live analysis is the sort of thing we've been talking about so far. Screens in the application, the Windows application and the browser application, that allow us to see that data and to run analysis against it and change the filters around it, etc. We can also run data into reports and dashboards. So we have two things here. At the bottom we have a dashboard. We've got the program level at the top, project level at the bottom. So the program level shown as a one-line summary of every project in the program, and at the bottom we've got the focus on one particular project. We can just change the pick list on the left hand side to get the ones up that we want. At the top we've got a report. This is a program report, and we've got a resource chart. We've also got a list of overdue milestones, and that's using exactly the same thing we've just been looking at a minute ago. It's running a view which is setting some filters. So that output is just giving me the table. It's not giving me a Gantt chart. If I'm interested in overdue milestones, it's generally a table I'm interested in, and it's showing me which project, which the milestone is, what the date is, and what percentage complete might be set against it. So it's just a very simple, clean list of tasks, but it's coming from exactly the same structural situation. Actually, the one at the bottom, changes, is coming from the issue register, which is also a planner file in a similar sort of fashion. And then the final one here is notifications. Notifications engine allows you to run rules to determine which tasks should trigger notification emails, and then they are sent to agreed recipients. These could be the people allocated to tasks on the plan, for example. So reminding people about tasks due to start or due to finish, that sort of thing. So really useful to you bring all that information into one central place, and then you can make a lot of use of it, sharing it with other people in more interesting ways, and ways that would take you a long time to do if you're doing it by hand. Okay, so that's enough for the PowerPoint. Let's go away and have a look at that in the application itself. So here we are, and straight away actually we're seeing the dashboard, which is showing me plan information for my current portfolio and project. If I switch project down the bottom, it's going to give me the plan for that particular project coming up nice and easily, and at the top I've got the summary view of plans ordered by start date, showing me one line summary per project for that particular set of projects. And as we discussed, some top line stats for those as well, the budget, progress and actual costs stats coming out of those. So that's a simple sort of dashboard. If I was to switch portfolio up here, I'd get that sort of analysis for my current portfolio. There we go. And I could dive in and see a particular project within that one as well. Fairly straightforward sort of idea. Let's go back from that and work our way then up from the start. So I'm in a project here. This is my CRM project, and it will have a plan. I know where the plan is as it happens, so I can come and find it. It's here. This is a planner file, and it's also covering risks and issues as well in this particular project. If I make changes to this file, it's going to feed into the central database. It's going to do that because we know that's the source of planning information for this project. If I come and click on the project manager's some information form, I can see that's the case. This is the file, and it's the source, as I say, of tasks, risks and issues on this project. So making changes will feed into the database. Let's go and have a look at that then. I'm just going to check the file out. It's going to open using the associated application. If we checked out a Microsoft Project file, it would open in Microsoft Project, of course. So here we are in Planner, and I've got this task down here. I'm going to change this task, give it some percentage complete, so we can see that change when we check the file back in. And that's the sort of thing we might commonly do: update the percentage complete, write some comments about what it is that we've been doing on this plan, etc., to share with our colleagues. That information is now going to be stored in the system when we check the file back in. As I mentioned, it's storing lots of cost information for us as well, potentially. We can see that here at each task level, then rolling up to the overall project level as well. We can see information about the resourcing costs of the task, the progress cost based on its current percentage complete, any fixed costs that might be feeding into that as well, and how that's going against actual costs. How much have we actually spent against that particular task? Like I say, those things roll up through to our total project level here up at the top. Other things that we collect in Planner, I mentioned about statuses and commentaries, so I can give a status for my plan. We actually use these in many of our reports. So rather than having a top level, we have a top level project status, but we also have statuses on key technical aspects of the project, like planning, risks and issues, benefits, finances, etc., to give you a bit of a more in-depth of how the particular project is developing. And like I mentioned, as well as overall percentage complete of the project, we also run a plan progress to date, which is telling us about the on trackness of the project. Is everything that's supposed to have been done by now actually done or not? So we can simply make changes, save that, close it, check it back in. That data will be fed into the central database, and I can then come and see that in the project controls menu. We have a nice little button on most of our standard methods here, which gives the my project tasks. So as I say, this is using a data range for me, because for team members, they're generally interested in the things that they are working on the project. They're not interested in everybody else's tasks, just their own. And so this is my project tasks for me on this project. And I can just see tasks that are allocated to me. They might be allocated to somebody else as well, but they're allocated to me. Here's the one that we've just been messing with. We can see the percentage complete is now changed. We can see our comments that we've added, etc. So that's pretty straightforward, and we make it like that so that the average team member can get very quickly to the things they need. They don't have to go and find the file, which is the plan, and have an application to open it. They just need to log into here, click on that, and they can see information about the tasks they're supposed to be working on. If you want to change data range, you can go to something else. So I could go to all my tasks. This is now every task for me across the entire system, all sorts of different projects, and lots of things probably that are completed behind me, and a few things that are coming up in the future that I'm working on. Gives me all that straight away. Of course, as the project manager here, I can go off and see the project task view, the thing we were looking at in the screenshot earlier, and there we are. We can see that now with its percentage complete figures improved, and I can see all the detail of the data here below. These use, like I say, a view. So this is a default view, which makes it look essentially like a Gantt chart, including all the summary groups and giving a sensible date range, etc. Let's just maximize that out a bit. And then we can go up a level higher to portfolio tests. You'll see there are some others which is for selected users, and this allows an administrator or resource manager to go in and cut the data in other ways. So to look for all their team members, or to look for other particular individuals or people that meet certain role characteristics. But in our case, we're just going to stick to my things, project things, portfolio things. So this is now all the tasks associated with this portfolio. We've got 280. It's not a particularly big number. It comes from quite a few different projects though, quite a few small projects here, and we can see some of these are running those dependencies. This is the one we were looking at earlier. This task is feeding the start of other tasks in other projects. So some of these tasks here may be coming from Microsoft project files because they're not showing dependencies. This one isn't because it's got a dependency at the end, but there may be some others in this example that are coming from Microsoft project. It's not easy to tell particularly, apart from the fact that you don't see any dependency lines on it. Not immediately standing out there. We'll go and find one in a minute that is. But we can see these inter-project dependencies showing through here, and they'll display if those tasks are due to be displayed in here, assuming that's been switched on in the display view. So if we change this now, change the view, and I go and look at overdue tasks, like I say, you've got a list of commonly used sort of analyses here, so overdue tasks. So this now finds all the overdue tasks in this portfolio. There's quite a few, but there aren't 290. It's a much more modest number. And many of those are milestones rather than tasks themselves. But we can pick up and see what those items are. Of course, these two things work in tandem. So if I went back to project overdue tasks, we'd see that same bit of analysis that we saw in the other screenshot, because it's the same. The data hasn't particularly changed. If we made one of these tasks 100% complete and reran this analysis, of course it wouldn't show. So it's running a set of filters and other display options, and we can see that inside the edit view here. So it's showing predecessors because we've asked it to. We could switch those off. It's showing progress bars. It's indenting tasks based on summary groups, etc. And a range of other options. Like I say, you can just give the table and not the Gantt chart, or vice versa. You can switch on and off calendars and milestones, which we'll look at in a second. The particular thing of interest here, of course, is the filters. So you can build up compounded filter rules based on all sorts of different characteristics of your data, which makes it really powerful. You can go away and look for things that you're interested in, including text matches for tasks, so you can find all the invoice dates or all the reviews or all the health and safety instance, or whatever it is you need to find based on the content in the plan. You can change the colouring of these, the columns that display in the table, the date range that's used for display. So here we maximise the display to make it easy to see, and we just wrap 1 week on either end of that, which is why when we go to overdue tasks, it blows out to focus on this task, and when we go back to the full plan, that task disappears back into its place within the larger setup. So I don't want to make any changes to that. So like I say, you can change these data ranges and views really easily just by using those standard pick lists to get quite a different change of analysis. We're just going to put that one back to default. And we're going to have a look at a couple of other things. So we've got three different types of display here. We've got the Gantt chart we've been looking at. We can switch that to a calendar view and go in and find details about the task. This is that same task we were looking at earlier. Once you're in here, you can, if you want, export that as a file to use in other applications as a calendar file to Outlook or whatever else you use for your day-to-day calendar management. And we can also produce a milestone chart. Now all of these displays work based on the current view and the current data range. So if I go to portfolio tasks, now we see a whole load more milestones appearing. It just interacts around those two different controls immediately, based on your current project and your current portfolio. So that's really easy to use, and that's the advantage of these pre-configured views. Your administrator can set up views that match what you want. They can be there in the pick list and they're just ready to use straight away. And that's the same on the browser as well. In fact, arguably even easier to interact with on the browser. So we're collecting all that data together into one place, and here we can see it across multiple different projects into one place and all appearing on the analysis. Let's just go and change portfolios, and I'm going to go and look at one which I know has got a Microsoft project file in it. And so this set of projects, I've got one MS project example project. This has got a Microsoft project file in it instead of a planner file. You wouldn't really know that though until you went in and had a look, apart from one indication, which is we've got the number of overdue tasks, we've got the plan percentage complete. Those are standard things, as we said, that we bring through. We'd have the start and end date of that plan calculated. The thing that Project in a Box calculates, the plan progress to date, though, isn't calculated for that project because Microsoft Project doesn't calculate that for you. Some other things might not be, but that might be because we've not been bringing other costs back. So in fact, these budget, progress, actual cost, those are not calculated again. They're planner fields. So, you know, you see some of the data coming through. Microsoft projects, you tend to see a little bit less. That's just the way it is. So we'll go in and have a look at that project and the My Project tasks. And I see My Project tasks on this project in a very similar way to the way I would have seen it with planner file as a source. If I click in, I can see details on that task. Like I say, I'll see a slightly more basic set of information. I won't see costing information. I can see resourcing information, but it won't have the cost elements of that built through for me. If of course I change this up to project tasks, like I say, you don't see the dependencies between them. The dependencies haven't been lost. They are there in the Microsoft Project file, and if you open it in Microsoft Project, change some tasks around, it'll reschedule it all for you, and then when you check it back in, those will apply into the database here. But it's just not showing you those links on the diagram here. Like I say, those meld in perfectly well. So if we go to portfolio tasks, and now we see some of these are planner files, obviously. This is our Microsoft Project example here, and these are the ones. You don't particularly notice that they're any different, and they'll apply to, filters will apply to them in the same way. So if we go and do our favoured overdue tasks, we'll see that we're picking up overdue tasks from the Microsoft Project file and from the other planner files. All of those things, those analyses, work in the same way based on the fundamental data that they've been given. Of course, if you look for overspending tasks, which is something based on the cost coming through from the plan, you won't find any there because we're not bringing data back on that topic. So it's slightly more restricted in some areas, but of course using a Microsoft Project file you can do some slightly different things that you can't do in Planner. So so that's using a Microsoft Project file. Here it is. We would just simply check it out. Well, let's do that. Check it out, open it in Microsoft Project. We could make some changes to those tasks. We'd check them back in, and then that would feed in, and we'd be making our changes in Microsoft Project. We'd be changing the schedule. So if I take this task here, for example, and let's make it much bigger, say 70 days, like that. Let's review and research activities, so we can save that, close it, and check it back in. And those changes will have reflected through into here. Review and research activities is now 70 days long rather than 30 days long that it was earlier. Just exactly the same as working with a planner file. We just bring slightly less data back, but it fits into that model in the same way as we've looked at it before. So, like I say, the source file doesn't particularly matter. What varies is what you can do with that file, and perhaps the type of file that you're familiar with working with will have some bearing on your choice. And customers often have a blend. So some people will use Microsoft Project, and other people will use Planner. Some people might use Excel still. Other people might bring data loads in from other applications. So it's entirely up to you how you mix all that. A couple of other things that we wanted to talk about was interplan dependencies. So the tool for having a look at that, and then notifications as well based on tasks. So let's look at the interplan dependencies first. So I've got a form here. It's an admin type form. It's not for normal users to be working with. So this is my plan dependency chain. I've got a number of rules in place about a task that's going to drive another task. Now this will only work when the task in the following project doesn't have any other dependencies on it. So if there are some dependencies within the plan, they will take preference over these interplan dependencies. So what that normally means, and in fact, normally when you set up a plan, the first task in the plan is set to a certain date. That's normally what would happen. And then if you move that date, the rest of the tasks in the plan run off of it. It doesn't have to be entirely like that, but that's quite a common, simple model. So you can drive that first task in the plan. If you want to drive other tasks in the plan, and you can do that, then you'll need to make sure they're not running through from some dependency driven by another part of that project. Of course, you can unhook them if you want to. They could be started off like that. You go in, check the file out, unhook that dependency, and then drive it with one of these dependency chain items. So this will tell you when you pick a particular plan item where that flows through, what things are happening after that in the dependency chain. You can see what the dependency lags are and which tasks and all that sort of thing. So it also has a little bit of a useful look up here telling you if the files are checked out, because of course you're trying to run this chain of projects following projects following projects. If a project is currently checked out, then it won't be able to update through that part of the chain. But it's a pretty straightforward thing to do once you get your head around that idea of a chain. Like I say, you can have Microsoft project files as inputs, but not as following tasks in the structure. And then the other thing we were going to have a look at was notifications. So we've got a whole menu here for project controls, and this allows me actually to jump to a particular data range of choice from here, rather than opening the form and then using the pick list. And here we've got notifications. So here I can set up rules about things that I want to run to notification messages. I've got a few of those. Some are based on issues and risks, a lot are based around tasks. So I've got 2 task ones that we're interested in here and that are currently active. You see I can set up other ones and then deactivate them. So this is new IT tasks. So if we click and have a look, it says this task is part of the IT portfolio and is due to start in the next 20 days. So it's going to let people know when their task is due to start in 20 days. It's using these rules. Days to task start is less than 20 days. Portfolio name contains IT. And it's as simple as that. Any task that meets that requirement will then be sent to the users assigned to that task. So it's going to send to people resourced on that task. That's assuming we hold an email address for them, of course. Now, this allows you to send to anybody who's a user in the system who we have an email for. Now, we have a special category of users in the system called contact only. And often those are suppliers or people who are involved in projects, but they're not active users of the system. You can have an unlimited number of those, as many as you want. You can store email addresses for those users. You can generate resource profiles for them and other such things. And you can drive email addresses to them, email notifications to them. So you would set them up as a resource on the plan. You would associate that resource with their email address. And then when their task is due to start, they get an email reminder based on this. And if we just click into these, you can see how these rules work. You've got a number of different characteristics based on the content, the tags, the task name, durations, days to start, days to finish, all the normal sorts of things that you might be interested in. Depending on whether it's a number type field or a date type field or a text type field, you'll get a different operator. So you could be running search patterns against text, as this one is. So the portfolio name, which is obviously a text field, and we're looking for things that match something. And we can delimit that, so we could look for IT and we could apply this rule to things that match the IT but also match HR, like that. So we could be looking for 2 lots of filters. Rather than setting up 2 separate filters, we're just running the one filter instead. So sending things to people assigned to the tasks or you can also send it to you, the person that set the rule up, which is often of interest as well. And you can also choose to send it to other named recipients, so you can pick those from the user list. So in this model, you can set a rule up like this. It can send to the people working on your tasks. It can also send it automatically to the project manager as a named recipient, and you can be sent these reminders as well. And often people will run different types of reminders. So this might be this is a month out reminder. It's 20 days before the task is due to start. You might have a second rule which just sends it to the person. You might have a second rule running 2 days before the task is due to start, which reminds you and the project manager as well. So that would be a second level of things. In a similar way, tasks overdue. This is looking for the task is finished yesterday, and it's looking for tasks that are not complete but finished yesterday. In those circumstances, it's currently sending to me and the person working on the task. But ordinarily, I might send it like that and say, the task's finished. It looks like it's been completed. Can you please update the plan? I might then run one 2 days after the task's finished, which sends to me saying the task still isn't completed. It needs investigating. So you can check those things and set those things at the levels that you are interested in. Of course, you can run it a day before the task is due to complete, reminding somebody that they should complete it and sign it off, etc. So those rules are quite interesting. The way that output is sent to you, well, I can have a look at things that I've been sent in Outlook here. So this is the sort of message that you receive. It's got tells you about the rule that's been run. It's sent to me as administrator in this particular case, and I can see the tasks, which projects they're from, the information about them. If I click on that link, it'll take me back to look at a very brief overview of that task information in the browser interface. Now that's if I've got access to log in and see that. If I'm just a contact-only user, I'll just get the email. I can't actually log in and see anything further. But it's a useful prompt and reminder about what's going on. So some customers find those incredibly useful. It's about reducing the mundane activities the project manager has to do and putting in place some stronger processes for reminding people what's going on. Other organisations think it's intrusive and don't like it. So it's completely a cultural thing. You'll either really love it and embrace it, or you won't use it at all. But that choice is up to you. You don't have to switch on the rules. You don't have to use them, but you can do if you want to. What I would say is getting it at the right level, not spamming people all the time with loads of information, but just picking out some key things really tends to make it work quite well. Okay, so that's what I wanted to take you through. We talked about some of the theory. We've looked at some of this in practice. We've looked at a Microsoft project file and a planner file going through the system. We're seeing the changes reflected immediately in the database, and that's really useful. Team members, they don't have to go and find the file and understand about what tasks are and how to run particular applications. They just click on My Project Tasks. They see a list of their project tasks. They can click in and find out who else is working on it, what they're supposed to be doing on it, etc. for whatever plan type. And if you're a Microsoft Project user and all of your users don't have licenses for Microsoft Project, this is great. It allows you to distribute that, all that work you've already done on your plans, and make it really useful disseminating it to people. And actually, it's a double benefit that people can't edit this without Microsoft Project and without permissions on the file to go and edit it, because often you don't want end users updating plans. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. If you're using Planner, actually, they can update Planner directly from the browser interface as well. So if you give them permissions to do that, they can go in and update their own percentage completes and things like that. And that's quite an increasingly popular thing to allow people to do. Okay, so that's the end of the explored session on planning. If you found that interesting, you might well be interested in the resourcing one. Covers some of the same ground, but in obviously a more resourcing related aspects of that, and that's available on YouTube and from our website as well. Okay, thank you very much.